For a brief moment, the image of a crown became more than a symbol of royalty. It became the center of a story about power, tradition, and the uncertain future of the British monarchy. A dramatic claim circulating online suggests that King Charles III could remove Queen Camilla's crown and place it on Catherine, Princess of Wales. On the surface, it sounds like an extraordinary royal confrontation. But before accepting such a dramatic headline as fact, it is important to separate what is officially known from what is imagined, interpreted, or presented for entertainment. The real story begins with the crown itself. Because in the British royal tradition, a crown is never simply a beautiful object. It represents rank, ceremony, history, and the role a person is expected to perform. Queen Camilla was crowned alongside King Charles III at Westminster Abbey on May 6, 2023. For that historic ceremony, she wore a modified version of Queen Mary's crown, a piece with a long royal history. The crown was adapted for Camilla, including changes to its diamonds and design, and became closely associated with her position as queen consort. That detail matters because it shows why the idea of someone suddenly taking that crown away would carry such a powerful emotional message. It would not merely look like a change of jewelry. To viewers around the world, it could be interpreted as a change in status, authority, or even the direction of the monarchy. And that is where the online narrative becomes so compelling. The story imagines a moment in which Charles makes a decision that would shock everyone around him. Instead of allowing the crown to remain a visual symbol of Camilla's position, he supposedly chooses Catherine, the Princess of Wales, as the person who should carry the image of the future. It is easy to understand why such a scenario attracts attention. Catherine occupies a unique place within the modern royal family. As the wife of Prince William, she is closely connected to the next generation of the monarchy, while Camilla represents the current reign beside Charles. But there's a crucial difference between a dramatic royal scenario and an official royal decision. There is no reliable evidence establishing that King Charles publicly removed Camilla's crown and placed it on Catherine. The viral framing should therefore be treated as a sensational narrative rather than a confirmed event. That distinction does not make the subject uninteresting. In fact, it makes the discussion even more fascinating because it raises a question that has followed royal watchers for years. How does a monarchy visually communicate the transition from one generation to the next without officially changing the order of succession? The answer is rarely as simple as one crown being passed from one person to another. Royal symbolism is built through appearances, ceremonies, public duties, photographs, and carefully planned moments. Every time senior members of the family stand together, observers look for clues about hierarchy and the future. A particular position at an event, a piece of jewelry, a carriage arrangement, or even the amount of attention given to a particular royal can become the subject of intense public discussion. In that environment, a crown can become a powerful visual shorthand for something much larger. Catherine's public role makes this especially interesting. Over the years, she has increasingly become one of the most recognizable members of the royal family. Her appearances with William are frequently interpreted through the lens of the future reign. Yet, that does not mean she has been given Camilla's constitutional position. The monarchy has a formal structure, and symbolism cannot simply rewrite it overnight. Catherine's eventual position will be determined by succession and constitutional convention, not by a dramatic exchange of jewelry during a public ceremony. Still, imagine a reaction if such an image really appeared. Cameras would immediately focus on every expression. Commentators would analyze Charles's face, Camilla's response, Catherine's posture, and William's reaction. Social media would explode with theories. Some viewers would call it a historic sign of generational change. Others would see it as a humiliation for Camilla. Still others would argue that the image had been deliberately staged to prepare the public for the future. In a matter of minutes, a single photograph could become a worldwide debate. That is the extraordinary power of royal imagery. The British monarchy has survived for centuries partly because it understands the importance of ceremony. Crowns, robes, uniforms, balconies, processions, and historic buildings all create a visual language that audiences recognize instantly. Even people who know little about constitutional details can understand that a crown carries meaning. It tells the audience that something important is happening. The deeper the story goes, the more complicated the meaning of a royal crown becomes. To many people watching from outside the palace, A crown may appear to be nothing more than an extravagant piece of jewelry. Inside the traditions of the British monarchy, however, it represents something much more powerful. It can communicate identity, ceremony, continuity, and public responsibility. That is why any suggestion involving Camilla's crown and Catherine immediately attracts attention. The question is not simply who might wear a particular piece of royal jewelry. The bigger question is what such an image would appear to say about the monarchy itself. When Camilla was crowned alongside Charles, the moment was carefully constructed around history and continuity. The use of Queen Mary's crown, adapted for the occasion, connected the modern ceremony with previous generations of the royal family. It was a visual reminder that Charles's reign was part of a much longer institution. Camilla's presence beside him also represented the reality of the current royal household. Whatever opinions people may have about her, her position at that ceremony was not accidental. It was a result of years of constitutional, family, and public developments that eventually led to the coronation. Catherine stands at a very different point in that story. Her image is strongly connected with the future because of her marriage to William, the Prince of Wales. William is first in line to the throne after Charles, which means Catherine's future role is naturally discussed whenever the monarchy's next generation becomes a subject of public attention. This does not mean that Catherine has already replaced anyone. Instead, it reflects the way royal families gradually introduce the public to the people who may carry greater responsibilities in the years ahead. That distinction is essential because sensational headlines often compress complicated royal traditions into a single dramatic moment. A headline suggesting that one woman's crown has been taken and handed to another can create the impression of an immediate power struggle. The reality of royal succession is far more structured. Titles, constitutional positions, and succession rights do not simply change because of a photograph or an emotional ceremony. The monarchy operates within established rules, even though public perception is heavily influenced by symbolism. And public perception can be remarkably powerful. For generations, royal watchers have examined photographs almost as carefully as official documents. They look at who stands beside whom, who enters first, who speaks, who receives the most attention, and which historical symbols appear in the background. Sometimes these observations are meaningful. At other times, they become theories built from very small details. The line between interpretation and fact can quickly disappear when a story becomes popular online. This is particularly true when Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine are discussed together. They represent different stages of the monarchy story. Charles is the reigning sovereign. Camilla is the queen beside him. William represents the next generation and holds the title of Prince of Wales. Catherine stands beside William and has become a major public figure in her own right. Their appearances together naturally invite comparisons, especially when viewers are thinking about what the monarchy might look like years from now. A dramatic image of Catherine associated with Camilla's crown would therefore carry a very specific visual message. It could make viewers believe that the future had suddenly arrived, but an image can suggest something without proving that it happened. That is one of the most important lessons when consuming royal content online. A compelling photograph, an emotional headline, and a confident voiceover can create a story that feels completely real, even when the underlying event has never been officially confirmed. This does not mean that every royal rumor is meaningless. Some rumors begin with genuine observations. A change in public duties, a new title, a different ceremonial role, or a major appearance can lead people to discuss what might happen next. The problem begins when speculation is presented as certainty. Responsible royal storytelling can still be dramatic while clearly identifying what is confirmed and what remains hypothetical. There is also another reason the crown story resonates with audiences. The British monarchy is constantly balancing tradition against modern expectations. Younger generations expect transparency, accessibility, and a more personal connection with royal figures. At the same time, the institution depends heavily on ceremony and historical continuity. That tension creates an environment where every major royal appearance can feel like a negotiation between the past and the future. Catherine represents much of that modern image. Her public appearances often combine traditional royal ceremony with a more contemporary presentation. She is photographed at formal state occasions, but she is also seen supporting charities, meeting families and participating in events designed to connect the monarchy with ordinary people. William has followed a similar path. Together, they represent a version of the monarchy that many observers associate with the next chapter. Camilla's role, meanwhile, is connected to Charles's present reign and the complicated history that preceded it. Her journey into the position of queen was unusually scrutinized by the public. The fact that she eventually stood beside Charles at his coronation demonstrated how dramatically the institution had changed over time. Her crown, therefore, carries a story of its own. It represents not just ceremony, but a long journey from controversy to official recognition within the royal institution. That history explains why a fictional or speculative image of Camilla losing the crown could provoke such strong reactions. Supporters might see it as unfair to a woman who reached an extraordinary position after decades of public scrutiny. Critics might interpret it as evidence that the monarchy is preparing for a new generation. Others might simply view it as a fascinating piece of royal drama. The same image could produce completely different interpretations depending on the viewer. And perhaps that is the real power behind the story. The crown does not need to be physically transferred for people to start thinking about succession. The mere possibility is enough to raise questions. How long will Charles reign? What will William's reign look like? What role will Catherine play? How will Camilla's legacy be remembered? And how will the monarchy maintain its traditions while adapting to a changing public? These questions cannot be answered by a viral photograph or a dramatic headline. They will unfold through real events, official announcements, and the gradual movement of time. Yet royal audiences remain fascinated because the British monarchy rarely announces its future in one simple moment. Instead, the future appears slowly through ceremonies, responsibilities, and changing public roles. That is why the crown story continues to capture attention. It is not simply about one piece of jewelry. It is about the powerful human fascination with succession. People want to know who comes next, who holds influence today, and what signs might reveal the direction of tomorrow. And when those questions involve Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine, even the smallest symbol could become the beginning of a much larger conversation. Perhaps the most fascinating part of the story is not whether a crown could literally be passed from Queen Camilla to Catherine, Princess of Wales, but why people are so eager to believe that such a moment could happen. Behind the dramatic headlines is a much larger conversation about the future of the British monarchy, the relationship between generations, and the way royal symbolism can influence public perception. A crown can be made of gold, diamonds, and history, but its greatest power comes from what people believe it represents. When audiences see one royal wearing a particular crown and another royal standing nearby, they naturally begin to ask what that image might mean for tomorrow. For Charles, the challenge is particularly significant. His reign represents a new chapter after the extraordinarily long reign of Queen Elizabeth II. That transition was never going to be simple. Charles inherited not only a throne, but also an institution carrying decades of expectations, memories, traditions, and public scrutiny. His coronation marked the formal beginning of his reign, while also reminding the world that the monarchy must continue beyond one generation. Camilla's position beside him became part of that transition. Her crown became connected to the present era of the monarchy, while William and Catherine increasingly became associated with the generation that will eventually follow. That is why comparisons between Camilla and Catherine are so persistent. They are not necessarily evidence of conflict. In many cases, they simply reflect the public's fascination with generational change. Camilla and Catherine occupy different positions within the royal family, and their responsibilities are not identical. Yet, whenever both appear at major events, audiences inevitably compare their clothing, jewelry, expressions, body language, public engagements, and the amount of attention each receives. Social media has made those comparisons even more intense because a single photograph can be examined by millions of people within hours. Sometimes the interpretation is harmless. People discuss fashion, ceremony, historical jewelry, or which royal appeared most confident. But sometimes the discussion turns into a much more dramatic narrative. A glance can be described as tension. A different seating arrangement can become evidence of disagreement. A missing piece of jewelry can be interpreted as a hidden message, and a crown can suddenly become the supposed symbol of a secret transfer of power. The problem is that visual storytelling can make speculation feel like documented history. This is where viewers should slow down and ask a simple question. What do we actually know? We know that Camilla was crowned alongside Charles in 2023. We know that Catherine is the Princess of Wales and the wife of William, the Prince of Wales. We know that William is first in line to the throne after Charles. We know that royal ceremonies use historical objects and traditions to communicate continuity. But the claim that Charles has secretly decided to remove Camilla's crown and transfer its significance to Catherine is not an established royal event. Without an official announcement or reliable evidence, it remains speculation. That distinction is extremely important for anyone producing royal content. A story does not need to pretend speculation is fact in order to be interesting. In fact, the uncertainty can make the story stronger. Instead of saying that a dramatic royal decision has definitely happened, the narrative can ask what such a decision would mean if it ever happened. Would the public see it as a sign of succession? Would it be interpreted as a message about Camilla's legacy? Would Catherine suddenly be viewed differently? Would William's future role become even more visible? These questions create discussion without presenting an unverified event as reality. The crown itself also deserves attention. Royal crowns are among the most recognizable symbols in the world, but they are not ordinary personal possessions. Their history connects individuals to institutions that existed long before them. When a royal wears an historic crown, audiences often see more than the person. They see previous monarchs, previous ceremonies, and the continuity of the crown itself. This is why a change in royal jewelry can sometimes receive disproportionate attention. People understand symbols emotionally even when they do not know every constitutional detail behind them. Imagine, for example, a future royal ceremony in which Catherine appears wearing a historic crown associated with an earlier generation. The image would instantly attract global attention. Newspapers would publish photographs. Television commentators would discuss the significance. Social media users would compare the image with previous royal portraits. Historians would examine the choice of jewelry and ceremony. Some would call it tradition. Others would see it as preparation for the future. Neither interpretation would necessarily prove that a constitutional change had taken place, but the symbolism could still be enormously powerful. This is one of the reasons royal photography matters so much. A single image can survive for decades. Photographs of Elizabeth II wearing her coronation crown became part of the visual identity of her reign. Images of Charles and Camilla at their coronation will similarly become historical records. Future generations may look at those photographs and study not only the people themselves, but also the clothes, jewelry, positioning, architecture, and ceremonial details surrounding them. The same will eventually happen with William and Catherine. Their photographs today are already being viewed through the lens of tomorrow. Every major public appearance can become part of the visual archive of a future reign. That does not mean every appearance is deliberately designed as preparation for succession. Sometimes a royal event is simply an official engagement, but because the public knows William's constitutional position, even ordinary moments can acquire additional significance. Catherine's role is particularly interesting because she has become one of the most recognizable faces associated with the future of the institution. Her public image combines familiarity with tradition. She can appear at a formal state ceremony in historic surroundings and, on another day, participate in a community event that feels much more personal. That balance is valuable to a monarchy attempting to remain relevant in a changing society. For Camilla, the story is different. Her journey to becoming queen was shaped by years of public attention and intense scrutiny. Her position beside Charles therefore carries a history that cannot be separated from the modern monarchy. The crown she wore at the coronation was not simply decorative. It became part of the visual record of a woman entering one of the most scrutinized positions in the country. Whether people admire her or criticize her, the historical significance of that moment is difficult to ignore. This makes the idea of a crown being taken away emotionally powerful, even when there is no evidence that such an event occurred. It creates a simple dramatic storyline. One generation gives way to another. Camilla becomes a symbol of the present. Catherine becomes a symbol of the future, and Charles becomes a person standing between the two eras. It is a compelling narrative because it turns complicated constitutional history into an easy-to-understand visual story. But real royal transitions are rarely that simple. There is no single moment when one generation completely disappears and another suddenly takes control. Institutions evolve gradually. Responsibilities change over time. Public expectations shift. New members receive greater visibility, while older members may reduce their schedules. Ceremonies introduce new faces alongside familiar ones. Eventually, what once looked like the future becomes a present. That gradual process may be much more important than any imagined crown exchange. William and Catherine do not need to receive Camilla's crown in order to become more prominent. Their positions already place them close to the center of the monarchy's future. Their responsibilities, public appearances, charitable work, and relationship with the public will shape how audiences perceive them long before any future coronation. The same is true of Charles. His reign will ultimately be judged not by the number of dramatic photographs surrounding his family, but by the decisions, duties, and legacy he leaves behind. A monarchy survives through continuity, but also survives by adapting. Charles must balance respect for tradition with the expectations of a modern audience. William will eventually face the same challenge, perhaps under even greater public scrutiny. And Catherine's role in that future may become increasingly important because the public often looks for a human face behind institutions. The monarchy can feel distant when viewed only through constitutional language. But when people see members of the family visiting communities, supporting causes, attending ceremonies, and interacting with ordinary citizens, the institution becomes more relatable. Catherine's public role therefore extends beyond fashion or royal appearances. It contributes to the way the next generation is understood. There's another fascinating possibility. Perhaps the real significance of the Crown story is that people are already psychologically preparing for the next chapter. Long before an official transition occurs, audiences begin imagining it. They discuss what William might be like as king, what Catherine might be like as queen, what role their children could eventually play, and what traditions might change. These conversations are not official predictions, but they reveal how strongly the public thinks about the monarchy as an ongoing story rather than a static institution. That is why a sensational claim can travel so quickly. It fits into a narrative people already understand. Charles represents the current reign. Camilla represents the queen beside him. William represents the next sovereign. Catherine represents the future queen consort. Put those four figures into one dramatic image, and the story seems almost to write itself. The danger comes when emotional power of that narrative becomes stronger than the evidence supporting it. Responsible storytelling does not mean removing all drama. It means giving the audience enough context to understand where reality ends and speculation begins. A video can still ask difficult questions. It can still explore the possibility of changing royal symbolism. It can still discuss the tension between tradition and modern expectations. It can still invite viewers to debate whether Catherine's growing public role signals a broader transformation within the monarchy. But the audience should know which parts are confirmed and which parts are hypothetical. This approach is especially important in an era when manipulated images, artificial intelligence, misleading captions, and sensational headlines can make almost any royal scenario appear authentic. A photograph may look real while showing an event that never happened. A headline may use confident language even when the article contains no official confirmation. A video may combine genuine royal footage with speculative narration and create the impression that viewers are watching a documented event. The responsibility therefore falls on both creators and audiences to question what they see. The fascination with royal crowns is unlikely to disappear. If anything, it may become stronger as the monarchy moves from one generation to the next. Every historic ceremony will create new photographs. Every new title will invite discussion. Every major appearance by William and Catherine will be viewed against the possibility of their eventual reign. And every appearance by Charles and Camilla will become part of the historical record of this current chapter. So, could a crown truly become the symbol of a transition from Camilla to Catherine? Symbolically, perhaps it could. Literally, there is no confirmed event showing that such a transfer has taken place. That distinction may sound small, but it changes the entire story. The most powerful question is not whether a crown was secretly transferred, but whether the public is already beginning to imagine the future of the monarchy through the images it sees today. Perhaps that is what makes the story so compelling. The British monarchy has always been about more than individuals. It is about continuity. One reign follows another. One generation eventually replaces another. Yet between those transitions, symbols help the public understand that the institution is still moving forward. A crown can represent the past, the present, or the future depending on who wears it and what the moment represents. For now, Charles and Camilla remain part of the current chapter, while William and Catherine represent the generation waiting further along the constitutional path. No dramatic crown exchange is required to make that reality meaningful. Time itself will eventually create the transition. And when that day comes, the world will likely remember the photographs that came before it, the ceremonies, the appearances, the crowns, the moments when two generations stood together. Perhaps historians will look back at today's images and see signs of change that were obvious only in hindsight. Until then, the crown remains what it has always been, a powerful symbol capable of creating enormous emotion from a single image. It can inspire admiration, criticism, curiosity, and endless speculation. But the most important thing is to remember that symbolism and fact are not always the same thing. The future of the British monarchy will not be decided by a viral thumbnail, a dramatic headline, or an imagined exchange of jewelry. It will unfold through real constitutional events, official decisions, public responsibilities, and the passage of time. And that reality may be less sensational than a rumor, but it is far more fascinating because it is a story that history will actually remember.